I still remember the way the rain fell that morning. It wasn't a heavy rain, just soft drops tapping the window like a quiet goodbye. My son stood by the gate, his bag slung over his shoulder, his car keys in his hand. He didn't look at me, not even once. I stood by the door, clutching the edge of my shawl, trying to smile. I wanted to say something, anything that would make him stop, but the words got lost somewhere between my heart and my lips. I watched him open the car door, put his bag inside, and start the engine. And then he drove away, just like that, without turning back. That moment, it broke something inside me, quietly. No shouting, no tears, no final hug, just silence. The kind of silence that wraps itself around your heart and never leaves. He used to be my whole world. My mornings began with his laughter. My nights ended with his voice calling, "Good night, Ma." But life changes when children grow up. They find their own world, new people, new priorities. And mothers like me, we learn to step aside, or at least we try. I didn't realize how far apart we had drifted until that day. It wasn't just distance. It was something deeper, something I couldn't see but I could feel, like a wall slowly built brick by brick, made of misunderstandings, unspoken words, and forgotten promises. I kept standing by the door long after his car disappeared down the road. The tea I had made for him sat cold on the table. I had even added extra sugar just the way he liked it. But he didn't have time for tea that day. He barely had time to look back. They say a mother should let her children go, that love means giving them freedom, not holding them close. But no one tells you how empty it feels when they actually leave. No one tells you how to breathe through the silence. That morning, I realized something. Sometimes love isn't loud or visible. Sometimes it just stands quietly by the door, watching someone you raised, someone you loved more than yourself drive away, without looking back. When he was little, my world felt brighter. His name is Arham. He came into my life like sunlight after a long winter, small, delicate, but strong in his own quiet way. I still remember the first time I held him in my arms, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I promised myself I would never let those hands go. Back then, our house was full of laughter. My husband, Rahim, worked long hours, but every evening he would lift Arham in his arms and spin him around the room. Our son's laughter would echo through the house, and I would stand in the kitchen doorway just watching, feeling like life was perfect, simple, complete. Arham was always a quiet child. He wasn't loud or demanding. He loved stories, especially the ones I told him before bed. Every night, he'd climb into my lap with his small blanket and whisper, "Ma, tell me the one about the stars again." And so I would. I'd tell him how every star in the sky is a prayer waiting to be answered, and that if he ever felt lost, he just had to look up and remember one of those stars belonged to him. He believed it, and maybe I did too. When Rahim passed away, Arham was only 12. That day changed everything. He was standing by the hospital window, silent, staring at the rain. I remember placing my hand on his shoulder and whispering, "It's okay to cry." But he didn't. He just looked at me and said, "I'll take care of you, Ma." Those words, they became my comfort, my hope, and maybe my weakness.
because I began to believe he always would. After Rahim's death, I poured all my love, all my purpose into raising Arham. I never remarried.
Not because I didn't have the chance, but because my heart was already full with the love I had for my son. He became my reason to wake up every morning. My every prayer had his name in it. Years passed. He grew taller, stronger, quieter. He loved books, just like his father. Sometimes I would peek into his room late at night, the light still on, a book open beside him, his glasses sliding down his nose. I'd whisper, "Go to sleep, Arham." And he'd smile, "Just one more page, Ma." I thought we'd always be that close, a team of two. But slowly, almost invisibly, things began to change. At first, it was just time. He got busier with studies, friends, college. Then came his job in another city. The phone calls became shorter. "Ma, I'm busy right now. I'll call later." Later sometimes didn't come. Still, whenever he did visit, my heart would light up like a festival. I'd cook all his favorite dishes: lentil soup, potato cutlets, and rice pudding. He'd smile politely, take a few bites, and say, "Ma, you shouldn't make so much food. I'm on a diet now." I'd laugh and tell him, "Mothers don't know diets. We only know feeding." But somewhere between those smiles and words, I could sense it. A distance growing. Not anger, not coldness, just absence. As if part of him was still here, but most of him was already living somewhere else, in another rhythm, another world. When he met Sarah, his future wife, I was happy for him, truly happy. She was polite, soft-spoken, modern, the kind of girl every mother wishes for her son. But from the first day I met her, I sensed she saw me not as family, but as an obligation. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I didn't. The wedding was beautiful. Everyone said I looked graceful in my light blue sari, but what I remember most is not the ceremony. It's how Arham barely looked my way during the reception. He was busy, greeting guests, holding Sarah's hand, smiling for photographs. And I stood near the corner, smiling too, but silently. After the wedding, they moved to a new apartment. Not far, just an hour's drive. I told him I'd visit sometimes, and he said, "Of course, Ma, you're always welcome." But that welcome somehow felt like a polite word, not an open door. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the house grew quieter. His room remained untouched, the books still on the shelf, his old sweater hanging behind the door. Sometimes I'd sit there and pretend he was just out for work, that any minute now I'd hear his voice at the gate calling, "Ma, I'm home." But the gate stayed silent. I tried not to call too often. I didn't want to seem needy. Whenever I did, it was always the same. "How are you, Ma?" "I'm fine, Beta. Just wanted to hear your voice." "Okay, Ma. I'll visit soon." But soon stretched into long, empty months. There's a strange thing about love. You can feel when it's fading. Not gone, but distant. Like a song played from another room. You still hear it, but the words are no longer clear. I told myself he was just busy, that marriage changes priorities, that it was okay. But deep inside, I missed my boy, the one who couldn't sleep without my bedtime story, who promised to take care of me forever. And though I didn't say it out loud,
I began to wonder, would he still remember that promise? Or had the world already taught him to forget? The first time I visited Arham after his wedding, I remember standing outside their apartment door with a small box of sweets in my hand. It was his favorite, milk fudge, from the shop he used to love as a child. The elevator ride felt long. I checked my reflection in the mirror inside, fixed my hair, straightened my shawl, tried to
Look cheerful. I wanted to look like a mother coming to bless her children, not someone afraid of being in the way. When Sarah opened the door, she smiled politely. "Oh, Auntie, you came. Arham didn't tell me." Auntie, just that one word. Not Ma, not Ami, not even Mom. For a moment, I froze. Then I smiled back. "Yes, beta. I just wanted to surprise you both." She stepped aside, still polite, still smiling, but it felt formal, distant, like a guest was entering, not family. Inside, everything looked perfect, neat, modern, beautiful. But it didn't smell like home. It didn't smell like Arham's childhood of books and my cooking and laughter. It smelled like new paint and air freshener. Clean, but unfamiliar. Arham came out of the bedroom, looking surprised. "Ma, you didn't call before coming." His words weren't harsh, but his tone made something inside me go still. I tried to laugh. "Do I need an appointment to see my own son?" He smiled, a small, strained smile, and hugged me quickly. It wasn't the same hug. It was brief, distracted, like his mind was elsewhere. I placed the box of sweets on the table. "I brought your favorite." He nodded. "Thanks, Ma. I'm just heading out for a meeting, but I'll try one later." That "try one later," it felt heavier than I can explain. All I wanted was for him to sit with me for 5 minutes, taste the sweet, and smile the way he used to. But he was already picking up his laptop bag, talking about deadlines and clients. Sarah offered me tea. She was kind, yes, but distant. We sat across from each other in the living room, her eyes occasionally glancing at her phone. I tried to make conversation, asking about her work, her parents, her life. She answered politely, but never asked much about mine. It wasn't her fault, really. We were from different worlds. Mine simple, hers fast, digital. Always connected to everything except the person in front of her. That day, I left after an hour. Arm wasn't home when I said goodbye. Sarah hugged me gently, thanked me for coming, and closed the door softly behind me. As I walked down the stairs, the box of sweets felt heavier than before. Not because of its weight, but because I had brought it to share, and no one had wanted to eat. Days turned into weeks. I didn't visit again for a while. I told myself maybe they needed time to settle. Maybe I was too emotional. But the silence between us grew. Aram's calls became shorter. Sometimes he didn't answer at all. He would text, "Sorry, Ma, busy today. We'll call tomorrow." Tomorrow became next week. Next week became next month. One evening, I decided to call Sarah instead. She picked up after a few rings. "Oh, hello, Auntie." "Beta, I just wanted to know if you both are doing okay." Yes, everything's fine. We've just been busy." Her voice was kind but quick, as if she had a dozen other things to do. Before I could ask more, she said, "I'll tell Arm you called, okay? Take care," and hung up. The silence after that call was louder than any noise. Months passed. Festivals came and went. On Eid, I made his favorite dishes, biryani, kebabs, and sheer khurma. I set the table for 3,
like I used to. And then I sat, waiting. He didn't come. He called in the evening, cheerful, apologetic. Ma, I'm so sorry. We had to go to Sarah's parents' place. Next time, okay? I said it was okay. Of course it was okay. That's what mothers say, even when it's not. I sat at the table, eating alone, pretending it was enough just to hear his voice. But my heart ached for the sound of his laughter in the house again. Sometimes I'd go to his room and dust the furniture, even though no one used it anymore. I'd open his wardrobe, straighten his old clothes, touch his childhood toys. Each thing whispered a memory of simpler days when Ma was the first word he called when he was happy or sad. Now, it was just a word I rarely heard. One afternoon, I fell sick. It wasn't serious, just a fever and weakness. But it felt heavier because I was alone. I called Arham, hoping he might come. He didn't pick up. I texted him, I'm not feeling well. Please call when you can. He called that night. Ma, you should have told me earlier. I didn't want to worry you, beta. I'm okay now. Do you want me to send some medicine? No. I just wanted to hear your voice. There was silence for a moment. Then he said, Okay, Ma, rest well. I'll visit soon. Soon. That word again. It felt like a promise made to time. Never to me. I tried to accept it. He had his own life now. A wife, a job, responsibilities. That's what I told myself every night when I sat by the window watching the empty street below. But inside I began to feel invisible, like I was fading quietly from the story I once belonged to. I was no longer part of his daily world. Just a voice on the phone, a name in his contact list, a memory that waited quietly for attention.
Sometimes neighbors would ask, Your son doesn't visit much now, does he? I'd smile and say, He's busy, you know how life is. But when I came home, that smile would fade. I missed the sound of his footsteps. I missed cooking for two. I missed hearing Ma said with warmth, not politeness. And one evening, when the loneliness became too much, I whispered to myself, maybe love does fade when distance grows. But deep down, I still believed he'd come back, that someday he'd walk through the gate, hug me tight, and say, Ma, I'm sorry I made you wait. That hope, it was the only thing keeping me alive. But I didn't know then that the next time he visited, everything would change, not because of what was said, but because of what was left unsaid. It was early winter when Arm finally came to visit again. Nearly 8 months had passed since I'd last seen him. The house felt alive that morning, as if even the walls were smiling. I woke up before dawn, sweeping the floor, airing out his room, making sure everything was perfect. I prepared all his favorite dishes: chickpea curry, fried okra, sweet rice, and tea with extra sugar. I wore the shawl he once gave me on Mother's Day years ago. It still smelled faintly of him. When the doorbell rang, my heart almost stopped. I rushed to open it, smiling like a child. And there he was, my son. But something was different. He looked tired, older, distracted. He hugged me, yes, but briefly, like a formality. Sarah followed him in, holding her phone, scrolling through messages, even as she smiled politely. I tried not to notice.
I just wanted to hold on to the joy of seeing him again.
Ma, you shouldn't have cooked so much, Adham said. You know I don't eat fried food anymore. I laughed softly. I know, Beta, but you can make an exception for today, hmm? He didn't answer. He just nodded and walked toward his room. I followed him with my eyes, realizing how much that space had changed. Once full of books and laughter, now just quiet memories. We sat for lunch together, the three of us. I tried to keep the conversation light, asked about his work, his life, their home. Sarah answered more than he did. He kept checking his phone between bites. At one point, I gently said, "You've lost weight. You're not eating properly, are you?" He smiled faintly. "Ma, I'm fine. You worry too much." "I'm your mother," I said softly. "It's my job." He sighed, setting his spoon down. "That's what I mean, Ma. You worry too much about everything." There was no anger in his voice, just fatigue. But to a mother's heart, even tired words can sound like rejection. Sarah quickly changed the topic, but the air had already shifted. Lunch ended quietly. After they finished, Sarah went to the living room to make a call. Arham stayed behind. I began clearing the table, humming softly, an old habit to keep silence from feeling too heavy. He stood by the window, arms crossed. "Ma, can we talk?" he said after a moment. I turned, drying my hands on my shawl. "Of course, Beta." He looked uncomfortable, his eyes avoiding mine. "It's about the house," he began. "Sarah and I were talking. You're living here alone, and it worries me. What if you moved somewhere closer to us, maybe with us for a while?" My heart lifted for a moment. "With you? I'd love that."
But before I could smile too wide, he added quickly, "I mean, not exactly with us. Maybe somewhere nearby. A smaller place. Easier to manage." The smile froze on my face. "Oh," I said softly, "you mean sell this house?" He nodded. "It's too big for one person, and honestly, Ma, you shouldn't live alone anymore. It's not safe." I stared at him quietly. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I should feel touched by his concern or heartbroken by what it really meant. He continued, "It's not that we don't care, Ma. It's just you have to understand. We're busy. We barely get time for ourselves. Having you so far away makes things harder." And he hesitated. "Sarah feels you'd be happier in a senior community. You'd make friends, have activities." The room felt smaller. The words senior community echoed like something unfamiliar, almost foreign. Was I old enough to be sent away? I tried to smile. "Beta, I have friends here. Your father built this house. Every wall has memories." "I know," he said quietly, "but it's time to move on." Something inside me broke softly, not with anger, but with ache. The boy who once promised, "I'll take care of you, Ma," was now asking me to let go of the only place that still felt like him. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling slightly. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, but it didn't feel like mine. "Arham, do you really think I'm a burden to you?" He looked startled. "No, Ma, don't say that. It's not like that at all." "Then what is it like?" I whispered. "You don't call, you don't visit, and now you want me to live somewhere else so you don't have to feel guilty about forgetting me?"
He rubbed his forehead. "You're making it sound worse than it is. I'm just trying to make things easier for everyone." "Easier," I repeated softly. "Yes, easier for you." Sarah returned then, sensing the tension. "Everything okay?" she asked. Arham nodded quickly. "Yeah, just talking." I turned away, pretending to fix the dishes, but my heart was heavy, so heavy that even breathing felt like effort. They left soon after. Arham hugged me briefly again and said, "Think about it, okay, Ma? It's for your own good." I nodded, unable to speak. I watched them walk to the car, talking quietly to each other. He didn't look back when he drove away. That night, I sat alone by the window. The house was silent, except for the sound of the rain returning. The same rain that had fallen the day Rahim died. The same rain that fell the day Arham left after his wedding. I whispered to myself. I watched him drive away again, and still he didn't look back. For days, I moved around the house like a shadow. I couldn't bring myself to pack anything. Every corner held memories, the pencil marks on the wall from when Arham was growing, the small crack in the kitchen tile where Rahim had dropped a cup and laughed. This house wasn't just bricks and walls. It was a memory of love, of everything I once had. One evening, I picked up an old photo album. There he was, little Arham, holding my hand at the park, smiling with missing front teeth. In another photo, he was standing beside his father wearing a school medal. And in the last one, he was at his wedding, smiling, looking at Sarah, not at me. I closed the album gently and whispered, "My boy grew up and forgot the woman who raised him." But I didn't cry. Mothers rarely do. We just feel, deeply, silently, endlessly. A few days later, Arham called again. "Ma, I found a nice apartment near us. The rent is good, and it's close to a park. I can help you move next week." I listened quietly. He spoke with efficiency, like he was organizing a task, not his mother's life.
When he finished, I said softly, "I've decided to stay here, Arham." There was a pause. "But Ma," "I said I'm staying," I repeated, my voice calm. "This is my home. I don't need a new one." He sighed heavily. "You're being stubborn." "No, Beta," I said. "I'm just holding on to what's left of my life." He didn't argue further. We ended the call in silence. That night, I prayed. Not for him to come back, not for time to reverse, just for peace. Peace in my heart and in his. Because even when a mother is forgotten, her love never leaves. It lingers quietly in every breath, every memory, every goodbye. I thought that was the end of our story, but time, in its quiet mercy, had other plans. Winter melted into spring. The rain stopped visiting as often, and the sun began to peek through the curtains again. Life went on, quietly, simply, without Arham. I got used to my silence. I learned how to fix small things around the house by myself, a leaking tap, a flickering bulb. Sometimes I'd talk to Rahim's picture in the living room and tell him everything that happened, as if he were sitting there, listening patiently, like always. I even joined a small group of elderly women who met every Friday at the park for tea and stories. We'd sit under the old banyan tree, laughing softly about our children, pretending our hearts were lighter than they were.
Every mother there carried the same ache in her eyes, the quiet loneliness of being remembered only in photos or on special occasions. But one thing about mothers is we learn how to keep loving, even when no one asks us to. We find ways to make peace with what hurts. And so did I. One evening, while watering the small plants in my backyard, I noticed the sky turning gray again. It was about to rain, that same kind of gentle rain that always brought memories. I smiled faintly and whispered, "Looks like you're visiting again, old friend." Just as I went inside, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. For a moment, I hesitated, then answered, "Hello? Ami?" My heart stopped. It was Adham. His voice sounded weak, uncertain. "Adham? Beta? Are you all right?" He took a deep breath. "Ami, can I come home?" Those words, so simple yet so heavy, filled my chest with a warmth I hadn't felt in months. "Of course," I said quickly. "Of course, Beta. This is your home. It always was." He didn't say much else, just that he'd be there by evening. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to scare the moment away. I just began preparing, like I always did, cleaning the living room, making his favorite food again, and lighting a candle in the corner where Rahim's photo stood. By the time I was done, it had started raining, softly, steadily. When the doorbell rang, I almost ran to open it. There he was, soaked from the rain, looking tired, his eyes red. And this time, he looked at me, really looked at me.
"Adham," I whispered, holding out my hands. He stepped forward and hugged me, tightly, desperately, like a child who had finally come home after losing his way. "I'm sorry, Ummi," he said against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. Mothers don't need explanations, just a heartbeat to know their child is hurting. We stood like that for a long time, the rain whispering outside, time standing still. After he changed into dry clothes, we sat at the dining table. He barely ate. He just kept looking down, fiddling with his fingers. Finally, I said softly, "Tell me what happened." He looked up, his eyes glistening. "Ummi, Sara and we had an argument. A bad one. She left 2 days ago to stay with her parents. I don't even know if she's coming back." I reached across the table and held his hand. "I'm sorry, Beta." He shook his head, tears escaping. "I thought I was doing everything right, working hard, earning money, planning the future. But I forgot the things that mattered most. I forgot the people who loved me without asking for anything." He paused, voice trembling. "He forgot you, Ummi." Those words broke something inside me, not in pain, but in relief. Finally, he saw me. I squeezed his hand gently. "Beta, we all lose our way sometimes. What matters is that you found your way back." He looked at me, surprised by my calm. "You're not angry?" I smiled softly. How can a mother be angry at her own child for coming home? He lowered his head and whispered, "You should be."
"I was hurt," I said truthfully. "But anger fades. Love doesn't." He began to cry quietly then, the kind of tears grown men try to hide. I reached out and wiped his face like I used to when he was a little boy. And for a moment, we were back in time. Just mother and son, no distance, no pride, no words between us. That night, we sat together for hours. He talked, I listened. He told me how work had consumed him, how the pressure of keeping up appearances and expectations had drained all joy from his life. He said Sara had felt neglected, lonely, unwanted. and how, in the middle of all that chaos, he realized he had become the very thing he once promised he'd never be: distant, cold, ungrateful. I listened quietly, my hand resting on his. When he was done, I said softly, "Arham, sometimes life teaches us through loss, but the lesson isn't to stay guilty, it's to love better next time." He nodded slowly. "I want to fix things, Ammi, with Sarah and with you. I want to be better." I smiled. "Then start now, beta. Every new day is a chance." The next morning, sunlight filled the house. I made breakfast, parathas, tea, and scrambled eggs, just like before. Arham helped me set the table, humming softly. It was such a small thing, yet it felt like healing. As we ate, he looked around and said, "This house still smells like home." "It always will," I said. He smiled, and for the first time in a long while, it reached his eyes. Days turned into weeks. He stayed for a while, helping me with small repairs, walking with me to the park in the evening, even attending Friday tea with my friends. They teased him, calling him Amika Lal. And he laughed, not embarrassed, but proud. Sarah eventually called. I don't know what they said, but after that, Arham seemed lighter. One evening he told me, "She's coming back. We want to start fresh, simpler, slower this time." I smiled. Good. That's all life really asks, to start again with love. Before he left, he hugged me tightly again. "Ammi, I'll visit every week, I promise." I chuckled. "You've said that before?" He grinned sheepishly. "This time I mean it." And somehow I believed him. When he walked to his car, I stood by the window, the same window I had once watched him leave from. But this time, something beautiful happened. He turned around. He looked back, and he waved. I waved back, smiling through tears. Because this time, he didn't drive away and forget. This time, he came home, not just to the house, but to the love he had left behind. That night, I wrote in my old diary, "A mother's heart never closes its door. No matter how long her child stays away, the light inside always stays on, waiting, forgiving, loving." I closed the diary and whispered into the quiet room, "Thank you, Rahim. Our boy came home."
The rain started again, soft and steady. Not sad this time, but peaceful. Like a song of reunion. Like life saying, all is forgiven. It's strange how life circles back. How pain, when met with patience, turns into peace. I sit by the same window every evening now, the one from where I once watched Arham drive away. But instead of tears, I carry a small smile. Sometimes I think about that day, the sound of his car fading down the street, the ache in my chest that refused to settle. Back then I thought that was the end of our story, but I was wrong. It was just a pause, a painful, necessary pause. Love doesn't disappear just because someone forgets it. It waits, quietly, like a candle flickering through a long night, refusing to go out. After Arham came home, everything changed. Not in big, loud ways, but in small, beautiful ones. The laughter returned, the smell of his favorite food filled the kitchen again. And sometimes when he'd call me after dinner just to ask, "Have you eaten, Ami?" my heart would soften all over again. He never said much about those lost years, and I never asked. We didn't need to. Some stories don't need explanations, they just need forgiveness. I realized something as I grew older. Forgiveness is not about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing peace over pain. It's about giving yourself permission to breathe again. I forgave him long before he asked, and when he finally came back, that forgiveness turned into love. Quiet, unconditional, steady. I sometimes imagine Raheem sitting in his old armchair watching all of this with that proud little smile of his. He always believed Arham would find his way back. He used to say, "A good heart might wander, but it never loses its home."
He was right. Arm visits often now. He brings Sarah sometimes, and when she hugs me at the door, I see in her eyes the same understanding. That family isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for. They sit together in the living room, drinking tea, talking softly, and in those moments, my house feels alive again. I know time will keep moving forward and life will bring new storms, but now I also know love survives every season. If you ask me what I've learned, I'd say this. We spend so much of our lives waiting for others to change, to apologize, to understand, to come back. But real peace begins the day we choose love, even when no one is watching. The day we decide that our hearts will stay kind, even if they've been hurt. That's what motherhood is. Loving without keeping score, giving without expecting, waiting without bitterness. And when love finally returns, as it always does in one form or another, it feels like sunlight after endless rain. Soft, warm, healing.
Sometimes, at night, I still sit with my cup of tea by the window. The city hums quietly, the streetlights glow like distant stars, and I whisper into the silence, "Thank you, life, for teaching me patience, for bringing him home." Then I close my eyes and imagine Aram's car lights turning the corner, not leaving this time, but arriving. And my heart feels full again, because even when he drove away and never looked back, my love never stopped following him, all the way through the miles, through the mistakes, through the years, until it finally led him home. Music fades out, a soft piano note lingering in the air. A mother's love has no finish line. It waits, it forgives, it endures. And when the child returns, that love becomes the quiet miracle that makes life beautiful again.